All right, here we go. We are on Daf Kuf Amid Aleph in Mesachos Pesachim. The Gemara asked the kasha of the Mishnah started Erev Pesachim Samachal Mincha told us that there is a halacha that lo yochal adam achetechshach. Samachal Mincha you can't eat achetechshach. The Gemara wanted to know my area Arbe Pesachim. Why is the Mishnah specifically asking about discussing Erev Pesach? This is a halacha by every Shabbos and Yom Tov. So Rav Huna said, nah, that is Rabbi Yehuda shita. But according to Rabbi Yossi, there's no inyan to not eat on Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov. You can eat oichel v'hoilech kol hayom, and it's only on Erev Pesach mishum chiyuv de matzah that you have to stop eating on Erev Pesach. And that's what we got up to on the top of Chaf Amarav. The Gemara says, Gemara brought a different opinion of Rav Papa, that a Mishnah could even go like Rabbi Yehuda. And he says, El Machvarte Ked Rav Huna, it really works best according to Rav Huna. Okay, so we are about 5 lines down. Frakti Gemara. Ula Rav Huna minicha. And according to Rav Huna, is it really okay? Does it really work out? Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Chanina. So we have the following statement. It goes like this: Halacha Rabbi Yehuda be'erev haPesach. So they paskin that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda on erev Pesach. The halacha Rabbi Yossi be'erev Shabbos. Okay. Now, if you're paskening that the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda on erev Pesach, why would you have to pasken that if everybody agrees on Erev Pesach lo yochal? Even Rabbi Yossi agrees, must be that if you're telling me that halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda on Erev Pesach, it must be that Rabbi Yossi argues also on Erev Pesach, which would mean that the Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, halacha Rabbi Yehuda be'erev Pesach. You're telling me the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda on Erev Pesach michlal. So I can derive from that statement the Rabbi Yossi b'Ravayu, that Rabbi Yossi would be arguing in both instances, both on Erev Pesach and Erev Shabbos. So that's a kasha on Rav Huna. Rav Huna wanted to say that our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yossi, and he only says that you're oichel v'hoilech and achetechshach on Erev Shabbos. But he agrees that on Erev Pesach he'd have to stop mishum chiyuv de matzah. From the fact that Rabbi Yochanan paskins like Rabbi Yehuda on Erev Pesach is mashma that they argue on Erev Pesach. Kasha on Rav, on I guess Rav Huna. Says the Gemara. Nay. Gemara says lie. No. You're correct, meaning your dik is correct, that the fact that he had a paskin like Rabbi Yehuda is you can make a dik, but they're actually arguing about something else as well. Halacha mechlal de pligi behavsaka. There's another machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Not only do they argue about whether you may eat, is there a time when you have to stop eating, but they also have a machlokes when it comes to havsaka. Do you have to stop when Shabbos or Yom Tov or Pesach arrive? Do you have to stop? That's called havsaka. Do you have to stop eating? I'm sorry? If you're in the middle of the seudah, do you have to stop? Mechlal de pligi behavsaka. There's also a machlokes when it comes to havsaka. Okay. The Tanya, like we learned in a brisa, mafsikin l'shabbasos. When it comes to Shabbos, Rabbi Yehuda says you have to stop. That means even if Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not allowed to start samachal mincha, you can't start your seudah. But let's say you started beheter. Okay, so you started a meal at 2:00 in the afternoon, and or whatever, assuming whatever plag mincha is, you started before mincha, samachal mincha, or mincha gedayla, you started before that, and you just had a meal, and you kept going. You had a nice seudah, it was a nice seudah. So Rabbi Yehuda says, when it comes Shabbos, you got to stop the meal. And what does that mean? You got to be oiker the shulchan. That's the language for saying a birchas hamazon. In the back in the day, so everybody had their own little table. You sat at a You sat on a little couch. You sat in there. You had a little table that you ate by. A little stender here like this. Yeah, you had your own little table. And when it was time to bench, so there was akira shulchan. They would take away the table, like our equivalent of clearing the table. They would actually clear the table. They took your table away, right? And that was a sign that the meal was over, and that you'd have to bench. So that's what it means, mafsikin. Mafsikin means they were oika the shulchan, and you had a bench, and then you'd make kiddush, and you wanted to continue, you'd make kiddush again, and you'd start another seudah. That's halacha mafsikin. Okay, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yossi says, "Ein mafsikin." You don't have to be mafsik. You can continue eating when Shabbos comes. No need to stop. Okay. So you're allowed. So Rabbi Yossi, now this is talking about Shabbos. This brisa seems to be talking about Shabbos. That's what it says. Mafsikin and Shabbos. So Rabbi Yehuda holds you can't start. But if you started beheter, even if you started beheter, you'd have to stop when Shabbos comes. And Rabbi Yossi holds no. Look, the way the Rashbam learns is, well, according to Rabbi Yossi, you're allowed to start on Erev Shabbos anyway. You could start whenever you want, and you don't have to stop when Shabbos comes. So you can start 5 minutes before Shabbos. You can start a seudah, and you can continue eating until whenever you want. And then when you finish eating, you bench, and then you make kiddush. We'll get to there. We'll get there. We're not there yet. We didn't do like Rabbi Yossi. We didn't do that. We'll get there. Okay, so that is Rabbi Yossi's opinion that you ain't mafsikin. Okay, just chap what he's saying. He's saying that you're allowed to continue eating until you finish your meal on Shabbos. You don't have to stop for kiddush. You can finish your meal, then you bench when your meal's over. You finished eating, then you make kiddush. What happened to kiddush makam seudah? Kiddush makam seudah. So it sounds like he holds either you don't need kiddush makam seudah, or he holds that the seudah that you had before kiddush was your seudah of your kiddush. Kiddush makam seudah doesn't have to be in that order. It means that you have a kiddush at the place where you had a seudah. So even if you had your seudah already and now you're having the kiddush, the seudah you had beforehand would work. Okay. Now, what does this tell us about Erev? What about Pesach? Remember, the Gemara said that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanina paskin that the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda on Erev Pesach, right? Then we said mechlal de pligi, and what are they arguing about? Not b'haskala. Everybody agrees. We want to say that you can't start samach l'mincha. The machlokes on Erev Pesach is if you started beheter, are you allowed to continue eating when Pesach comes? Right? And we're passing like Rabbi Yehuda that you have to stop. But Rabbi Yossi holds you're allowed to continue. So let's make this cheshbon. Okay, so here you are, you're Rabbi Yossi, right? So let's say we did like Rabbeinu Tam, and you started, it was Erev Pesach, you got hungry, so you started your meal, you washed on some matzah ashira, and you're having some matzah ashira. Okay, and you're enjoying the meal, it's going well, and it just keeps going. And now Pesach comes. Pesach comes in. So you keep it. Maybe you switch to regular matzah. You eat your matzah, and then when you finish eating, you finish your seudah, you bench. Now what do? Now you got to make kiddush. So you make a haggadah. So now, according to this, what's going to happen? You're going to have your first kais is going to be berachas hamazon. You still need 4 kaises. Your first kais is berachas hamazon. Your second kais is kiddush. Okay. Then you have karpas, and then you eat maror. You say magid. Maybe you have another kais, and then you eat some maror, and then you say halal on your 4th cup. Okay, this is what the Rashbam says. According to Rashbam, you don't have to eat matzah again. You eat matzah during your meal. You make an alachilas matzah during your seudah. And somebody pointed out that then you're having wine and you're having karpas and maror after the afikaimen. According to Rabbi Yossi, even though everybody seems to hold ein maftir achra pesach afikaimen, you're not supposed to eat after the afikaimen. But just like we allow you to drink wine after the afikaimen, which we drink for the case of birchas hamazon and of halal, he says, L'tzarech mitzvah, you'd be allowed to eat vegetables. You can have your ruckus, and you can have your maror after the afikomen. Interesting. That was what would come out according to Rabbi Yossi, who holds ein mafsikin. You don't have to stop even on Pesach. Okay. Why not? Kerech you could have by your meal. Before you benched, yeah. Then you'd have to have your maror then too. It's interesting. He doesn't say that though. He says, I guess that was a minhag. I guess Rabbi Yossi didn't do that. That was just like a whole thing. That's a good ha'ara. That was just like a minhag. So the Rashbam didn't address what you do with the with kairach. Okay, so this is I'm just working out the shita here of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi shita that on even on Pesach, even though he holds samach lamincha lo yoichal, but if you started beforehand, Rabbi Yossi holds you do not have to stop when Pesach comes in. And on that, Rabbi Yochanan Paskin, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that on Erev Pesach, even if you started early, you have to stop when Pesach comes. Okay. Now the Gemara brings a Maisa. Umaisa b'Reb Shimon Gamliel. That is the part that's Bryce. The Bryce we showed a machlokes about Hafsaka. Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi when it comes to Shabbos, whether you have to be mafsik or not, which we apply to Pesach as well. Umaisa b'Reb Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi. Shahayu Mesubin, not in Bnei Brak, but they were in Akko. Okay, they were Mesubin in Akko. The Kiddush Aleim Hayom. And Shabbos is we're talking about a Shabbos. The Kiddush Aleim Hayom. And the Kiddush land, that's a lashon of the day became Kaddish. It got dark, so now it's Shabbos. So Amr le Reb Shimon ben Gamliel le Reb Yossi. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says to Reb Yossi, Beribi. That's a title of the Gadol Hadar. So he called him Beribi. As this is Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, if I'm not mistaken, and this is Rabbi Shimon Gamliel saying to Rabbi Yossi, and he says he calls him Beribi, which is a title of the Gadol Hadar, a great one. Ritzeincha nafsik, would you like to stop? V'neichush l'divrei Yehuda chavereinu, and this way we can be chayshish, we can give a little covered to Yehuda, our friend. Right? Which is, the lashon of the Gemara. There's another girsa, and it's not v'nechosh l'divrei Yehuda, but it's actually v'nechosh liYehuda chavereinu. And the point was, not forget his shita. Rabbi Yehuda, he stopped eating. Right? He holds mafsikin. You got to stop. So he's saying, we should feel bad for him. Nechosh, feel bad for Rabbi Yehuda. He can't eat anymore. And we're going to continue eating till, whenever. So we should be Nechosh Yehuda Chavereinu. Or L'divrei Yehuda Chavereinu. So that's what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel offered. So Amar Loi, Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, B'chol yoyim v'yoyim ata mechaviv devarai lifnei Rabbi Yehuda. Every day you hold of me. And that's how we do. The halach is like Rabbi Yossi mechaveroi. So you always paskin like me. And now, now you're going to show preference to Rabbi Yehuda in front of me? And he quotes the line of Achashverosh, who said as Haman was falling on Esther, he said, Hagam lichboish as hamalka imi babayis? Are you going to vanquish the queen together with me in my own home? Meaning, you're mamish embarrassing me. You're going to paskin like Rabbi Yossi, like Rabbi Yehuda in front of me? That's mamish and abusha. Correct. So Amar Le, so Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says to Rabbi Yossi, Imkain, if that's so, loy nafsik. We're not going to be mafsik. Shema yiru hatalmidim, because maybe the talmidim are going to see the yikvu halacha l'deiros, and then they'll end up pasking like Rabbi Yehuda for future generations. Amru, and they made a statement came out, lo yizazu misham, they didn't move from there at shekavu halacha Rabbi Yehuda till they were kaveh. The halacha is like like Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi that ain't mafsikin. When it comes to regular Shabbos, ain't mafsikin. You're allowed to continue eating your seudah. I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we'll go back and see some of the right here. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Shmuel. Ein halacha like Rabbi Yehuda v'like Rabbi Yossi. Truth is, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, that mafsikin, and the halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi, that ain't mafsikin. Correct. Ella peiris mapa umekadosh. The halacha is that we spread a tablecloth over the table umekadosh, and we make kiddush. Now, what is that? What is he doing exactly? So the way the Rashbam learns is that really he's paskening that you don't have to be mafsik. Correct. Meaning hafsaka means that there's a kirs hashulchan. You have to remove the table and you have to bench. She says, really, we're not. That would be mafsikin. That would be if you're passing like Rabbi Yehuda. So the way Rashbam understands his opinion is no. We're not really paskening. We're not passing like Rabbi Yehuda. We're really passing like Rabbi Yossi. That ain't mafsikin. But he's saying we're not going to. So we're not going to say Berachas Hamazon, but we are going to say Kiddush. And therefore, we're going to be Peiris the Mapa on the Meichel, just like we do on every time we make Kiddush. We cover the Challah.
Seudah before that you're not being mafsik. This mitzvah or any like this.
It's a seudah. Yeah. Again, according to if you hold like Rabbi Yossi on Erev Shabbos, so you don't have to stop early. So you could have started a seudah an hour before, whatever. Maybe it was convenient. You started a seudah early, and then you kept it. Now Shabbos comes. So according to Shmuel, your Shabbos comes, so that it's already a chiyuv of kiddush. So the chiyuv of kiddush comes now. So he holds you can't eat anymore. You got to make kiddush. It's not like exactly like Rabbi Yossi holds. So therefore, he holds you got to. Right? Let's take a look at the bottom 5 lines in the Rashbam. 2, 4, 5 lines. The mamash at the bottom page. V'nira be'enai. Desvir leila Shmuel the halacha k'Reb Yossi. Seems to me that Shmuel is really passing like Reb Yossi. Kedaktani be'braisa, like everybody was pointing out. Shekavu halacha k'maisa. The Braisa just said that we're passing like Reb Yossi. El shabal lahachmir latzmai. He's going to be machmir alatzmai ksas. Shlo yigmar seudah sevi yikadosh achakach. Not going to finish the seudah and then make kiddush. El yikadosh tchila. First we'll make kiddush. The achakach yigmar seudah. So then we'll finish the seudah. Shmuel the Amar Kaman. Because if you're not going to say that, then whose opinion is Shmuel going like? The Amar Kaman. The Haba Braisa, the Tani Paris Mapul Mekadosh. He's saying the Braisa that we're going to quote, we're going to learn on Amid Beis is not talking about this Paris Mapul Mekadosh. That's talking about the regular halacha of covering the bread when you make kiddush. But his Paris Mapul Mekadosh is a halacha of is a little bit of an Indian of stopping the meal and then continuing weiter. Okay, so this is Shmuel's halacha. That we're being Peiris Mapul Mekadosh. This is what you were referring to when we said it before. This halacha of what we did, some people did last year on Erev, on Purim Shechaliyas Be'erev Shabbos. So the halacha there, being Peiris Mapul Mekadosh, is that since you're already eating, let me be them a little bit more before we do this. Now, yeah.
That's referring to the fact that is saying the halacha is not like either of them. It's more machmir than both of them. Is that what Rashbam is saying?
Well, no, it's not being more machmir than Rabbi Yehuda. He's passing like Rabbi Yossi and being a little bit more machmir than Rabbi Yossi. But Ikar, he passes like Rabbi Yossi. You don't have to be mafsik. But he wants to have kiddush before the seudah. Could be because we'll see on 2 days that he's one of the strong proponents of kiddush makom seudah. So it could be he preferred to do it a little differently, maybe. But being Peiris Mapul Mekadosh is a halacha of being mafsik your seudah, but not completely being mafsik, not requiring a birchas hamazon, but it's requiring you to stop eating in order to make kiddush and then to continue your seudah. Now, let's go back here for a moment and discuss a few of these halachas that we brought, because we primarily here we have two big machlokes in. We have halacha when it comes to starting your seudah on erev Shabbos. We have halacha about starting your seudah on erev Pesach, and then we have halacha about stopping your seudah on erev Shabbos, erev Yom Tov, and stopping your seudah on erev Pesach. Okay, the way the Rashbam learns is that we might as well learn it inside. We got the time. So take a look at the Rashbam. Amr le Reb Shimon Mil im kain le nafsik chulei. So that's an advantage of having Rashbam. Is Rashbam, more than Rashi, he'll tell you, what comes out from the sugya. So it's right in the middle of the thick lines in Rashi. Okay, the first word on the line in the Rashbam is im kain, at least in my Gemara, im kain le nafsik, and the Rashbam begins shamin and mehacha. We hear from this that Arvei Pesachim asur lechol mitayv teshois ulamala. Okay, it's the first thing. We paskin like our Mishnah, and that is like Rav Huna learned that the Mishnah goes like Rabbi Yossi, that you have to stop from samach lemincha ulamala. You have to stop eating. Oh, okay, that's number one. When it comes to Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, muter lechol min mincha ulamala. You would be allowed to eat from mincha onwards. Sasam lan tana demasisin Rabbi Yossi, because our tana here is saisim like Rabbi Yossi midunakat Avrei Pesachim, because he only talks about Avrei Pesachim michlal de b'shar Yom Tov shari. That's the mashmai says. He only says this about Erev Pesach. Other Yom Tovim he doesn't mention, so therefore it's a good diak. Now, I just want to point out something I missed yesterday.
Yesterday that the Mishnah has to be according to Rabbi Yossi because, right? Correct. That's Rav Huna's opinion. But I'm going to stop it. Mati asked the kasha yesterday, and he said, "What do you mean? The Mishnah talking about what kind of diak is that? The Mishnah we're in Pesachim. So why should the Mishnah talk about Yom Tov or Shabbos? There are other Mesachlis that could deal with that." That was a good kasha. So let's just jump now back to the bottom of Tzadik Tesam Beis. Taisus asked that kasha. Ma'ir ya'arei Pesachim. Why doesn't the Gemara just answer the Tana b'Pesach koi? The Tana is talking about Pesachim. So why should it mention Shabbos or Yom Tov? We're talking about Pesachim. And the Kindle Mashani Parakol Show, like the Gemara answers previously on Dav Lamed Zayin. Gabi Pasava. V'yesh Leimar. So today's the answers. Mishum de b'Pesach koi ein le lahaniach arvei Shabbos de tediri b'chol shavua. Says you're right. We are talking about Pesach, and we're in Mesechus Pesachim. But you can't, just because we're talking about Pesach, you can't leave out something that happens every week. Shabbos is much more common. So if you held if you held this halacha about Shabbos, you got to mention it now also. Okay, and it gives a second teretz that maybe you'd make a mistake and think otherwise, but that's Pesach addresses this issue. So and therefore the Rashbam is right for making the Gemara is right for making the diuk from the midasasam, from the fact that the Mishnah only talks about Avrei Pesachim. So that would be a raya that we paskin that this halacha only applies in Erev Pesach, and that would be like Rabbi Yossi, not like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so therefore we're paskin that on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov there's no halacha to stop eating before ba'asamach l'mincha or ba'mincha. Okay, back in the Rashbam. V'kaimla nami. Another reason why we should pass like Rabbi Yossi is because we have an established rule in Pesach, and that is halachic Rabbi Yossi mechaverei. The halacha is that when Rabbi Yossi argues with somebody else, the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi. Okay, so that's a machlokes Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to pass like Rabbi Yossi. Good. Now, afilu lahascha v'lechel achar teish shari behedya lekaman b'shmaitzin. Okay, now he brings a raya from Amid Beis, which we'll see tomorrow, that the Gemara there is mefurish, that when it comes to starting, you are allowed to start after Tisha Shois. Okay, and we'll just, the Amar, because the Gemara is going to say tomorrow, on Kuf Amid Beis, Hadetanya v'shavin shemaschilin emas. The Gemara says that everybody agrees that you're allowed to start a seudah. The Gemara asks when? When could that possibly be? Ibe Erev Shabbos. If it's on Erev Shabbos, thank you. We got a.
While waiting for the lights.
Yeah.
There's no one says anything that there's any chiluk between Shabbos and Yom Tov.
Correct.
Shabbos and Yom Tov.
Correct. They go hand in hand. So it says, Iber of Shabbos, the Gemara says, Hapolig Rabbi Yehuda. So we see clearly that when it comes to haschala, Rabbi Yossi is a clear Mefurish Gemara that Rabbi Yossi holds that you are allowed to eat. It's even lechatchila, it sounds like, because there's some Rishonim that hold that's what he's bavarning. Other Rishonim hold maybe Rabbi Yossi really holds it's only b'diavad you're allowed to eat. If you were eating, then you're out to mafsik. But he's bringing a chlorai from the Gemara that you're allowed to start a seudah on Erev Shabbos at any time. Okay, so that's how we paskins. That's when it comes to beginning. Okay, umiyu. Le'inin hafsaka, when it comes to stopping, so ein halacha Rabbi Yossi ba'arei Pesachim. The halacha does not follow Rabbi Yossi on Erev Pesach, ela Rabbi Yehuda. We pass on like Rabbi Yehuda. Shem hischa lechel koidim tes. If you began eating before 9 hours, that's an important nakuda here. The Rashbam sounds like he's saying that if you begin be'isser, you'd have to stop. Right? But if you started beheter, shem hischa lechel koidim tes, v'nimshach achilase ad cheshech hashecha, tzarich laker es hashulchan miyar k'shiyachshach. You're going to have to stop your meal. You're going to have to bench ulachzir l'shem Pesach. You have to bring it. You have to start your Seder again. Ubeshabbasis ubiyamim taivim lo yafsik. You don't have to be mafsik. You do not, which means you don't have to bench. Ela paris mapo mekadesh, like we're going to see later on from Shmuel. All you have to be is put on a new tablecloth or cover the challahs, make kiddush, and then you can finish your meal. So that is the opinion of the Rashbam. Again, we're passing like Rabbi Yehuda. We're passing like Rabbi Yossi, Le'inyin. And when it comes to Erev Shabbos, we passing completely like Rabbi Yossi, that you can start whenever you want, and you don't have to stop. And when it comes to Erev Pesach, there, we passing like Rabbi Yossi, everybody agrees that you're not that samach l'mincha yechal, and if you started beheter, there we pass like Rabbi Yehuda that you have to be mafsik and start again. Great. That is Rashbam's opinion. Now, there are some other opinions here. If you want to get, actually, there are 3 other variables here, but we won't go through all of them, but I'll just tell you that the Taisus quotes a Bahag that causes a big tumult. This is in the Taisus of Ein Mafsikin, the third to last Taisus. Okay, so if you're in the last Taisus there, V'oid, so right, 3 lines from the end of Taisus. V'oid kasav bahag, the be'erev Shabbos ein lahas chalechel min ha-mincha u'lamala. He says you should not begin a seudah min ha-mincha u'lamala. Da'afil Rabbi Yossi like ha'amar, because even Rabbi Yossi holds the lo yafsik. Avala aschule loy. All right, so that's the Bahag the Rashbam was coming to argue on. That he holds that you cannot begin a seudah even on Erev Shabbos. That's the opinion of the Bahag. Okay, lahalach we hold that you're not allowed to have a seudah gedola, a mitzvah imnuye from a seudah gedola on Erev Shabbos. Min ha-mincha u'lamala, I think. That's why we don't have big seudas on Erev Shabbos. Except that's why it was only Nagea when Purim fall out on Shabbos, because l'tzarech mitzvah you're allowed to have a big seudah even on Erev Shabbos. That's why it was Nagea on Purim, so you were able last on by Purim you're able to have a big seudah, and then you can get into once you have a big seudah, so then you don't have to be mafsik, you can be paris mapo mekadesh like Shmuel says. Okay, let's read a little bit more in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, okay, so now Reb Shmuel just paskined. See, there's something else I wanted to share with you here. I spoke about that.
Where's the Yossi put davening in all of this?
Oh, they're excellent. That was a good nakuda. There is, in general, okay, if you start a seudah, let's say you didn't shake lulav yet. That's where the sugya comes up again in the Rishonim. If you didn't shake lulav, are you allowed to have a seudah before you shake lulav? Before you do any mitzvah, you know there's a big tumul in every yeshiva. Are you allowed to be mafsik for kiddush on Rosh Hashanah? What's the issue? How could you eat before you do Tchiyah Shofar? You have a mitzvah to be makayim. How can you eat before the mitzvah? So how could Rabbi Yossi say that you don't have to be mafsik? What do you mean? There's a mitzvah deraisa of kiddush that you have to make. So how could you not be mafsik? That's a kasha that the Rishonim ask, right? For mitzvahs derabanan, especially if you started beheter, you have more leeway. So tefillah wouldn't, for Kriya Shema maybe you'd have a handle. What about Kriya Shema? Why do you have to be mafsik for Kriya Shema? But they asked the kasha about kiddush. Why do you have to be mafsik for kiddush, Rabbi Yossi? How could you say in mafsikin? What happened to kiddush? It's a fair kasha. Huh? I'm trying to remember one of the tirutzim.
You can say kiddush during the seudah.
He holds you don't have to. He holds you continue eating, and then when you get to berachah, you make your bench, and then you make kiddush. So either he holds that you don't have to. Could be he holds kiddush is could be he holds in general you don't have to be mafsik for mitzvahs. Maybe that was one shita. And then another opinion may have been that being that you're be'emtz the seudah, being that you're in the middle of a seudah, so we're not concerned you're going to forget to make kiddush because you're Isaac in the seudah. That's what you're in the middle of. So you'll end up making kiddush. Like kiddush is maybe like sort of the part of the seudah, something like that. So we're not concerned you're going to forget. Another opinion is that even if you forget, you can make kiddush tomorrow. Like you're not going to lose out, right? What's that luck if you didn't make kiddush on a Friday night? I don't know. You're in the emergency room, God forbid, on Friday. You didn't end up making kiddush. Right? So the luck is you make kiddush on Shabbos morning. It's Shabbos tashlumin, or it's just kiddush. It's the mitzvah to be makadosh today. So you didn't do it yet. The mitzvah, the best time to do it is when you start the day. When I talk about kiddush, I'm talking about the bracha of kiddush. So you can make it Shabbos morning. You make the kiddush, not al kain berach. You make the bracha of kiddush, makadosh Shabbos. So even if you're messed, so meaning the whole problem why you have to stop when you come to be makayim a mitzvah is because you're gonna forget to do the mitzvah. So you got to stop whatever you're doing to do the mitzvah. But that's because you may miss it. But if here I'm not gonna miss it because I can always do it tomorrow, so then there would be no need to be mafsik. I think that's a teretz also.
Isn't one the night versus the day? One's the rabban, one's the reisa?
Yeah, I'm talking about the mitzvah deraisa of kiddush is the nusach of the nusach that we say in the kaddish Shabbos. Sherotza, we say Friday night. That's called kiddush. So if you missed that on Friday night, you would say that on Shabbos morning. And if you slept till Shal Shudis, you would say that nusach by Shal Shudis. It's also fine. That's the halacha. Correct. Okay, that was one Indian. Good, thank you for reminding me. And then it reminds me of another Indian I want to tell you about. I forgot again. Now maybe it'll come to me again. I forgot it. There's something else I wanted to share with you. Making kiddush.
So there was another
being mafsik.
There was the Rashbam, the Bahag, and there was another.
Yeah, but there's a lot of. There's another one, but I wanted to tell you something else. Oh, I forgot what it was. Okay, maybe I'll remember. Let's finish up the Gemara. We got to finish the Amud. I'm reviewing the Mishmul. So Allah in Allah like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yossi, El Peres Ma'avu Makadosh. Correct. Gemara. Aini, is that really true? V'Amar of Tachlifa Baravdimi Amar Shmuel. So we have another member in the name of Shmuel. Kishem Shemafsikin LaKiddush. The same way you have to stop your meal for Kiddush. Kach Mafsikin Havdalah. So too you have to stop your meal for Havdalah. That means it sounds like that if you're in the middle of eating on Shabbos and it got dark, so you have to stop eating and make Havdalah, just like you'd have to do that on Erev Shabbos. If you're in the middle of eating, you got to stop your meal and make Kiddush. So for example, my mafsikin, what does he mean by mafsikin? Until now, whenever we said the word mafsikin, like when Rabbi Yehuda used the word, it meant akiris hashulchan and benching. So my mafsikin, lav akiris shulchan, isn't that what it means? When Shmuel said mafsikin, that means you got to stop your meal, bench, and then make kiddush. Gemara says lie. No, he just means lamapa. When Shmuel said mafsikin, he meant what he holds of being paris mapa umekadish. Okay, that ends that sugya of paris mapa and hafsaka and haskola of sudas on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yantif. Yes.
But the reason mafsik has nothing to do with being separate from where you can't start.
Oh, now you reminded me. Yes. Okay, you reminded me. Let me just say one thing and then I'll go back to it. One more kasha on Rabbi Yossi. How could Rabbi Yossi say, Ein mafsikin? What was the reason why he said, he agrees, Erev Pesach samach l'mincha lo yechel adam ad shetachshach? Why is that? Bisham chiyuv d'matzah, which Rashbam is learning means you should have an appetite to be able to eat your matzah with a teyavin. So then how could he hold Ein mafsikin? How can he hold you? Don't stop. You can, if you started your meal early, you can continue into Pesach. Aren't you going to be full when it comes to eating the matzah?
He uses mafsik on Pesach. He's full of money. He should say mafsik 2 hours before.
Okay. So that I don't have a teretz for, but for Rabbi Yossi I have a teretz. So the second taisa, the third taisa on Tzaddik Taf Amid Beis had a similar issue. And that is, the halacha is, the Gemara in Daf Mem talks about what happens if you don't have a lot of matzah. Let's say you only have a kazayis of matzah, of shmur matzah. You only have a kazayis of shmur matzah, one kazayis, right? So the Gemara there says, mimala, a person could be, where's Lashon? B'tzeka shalnachem, mimala ada on tzadik tesam and beis, the third taste, samach l'min chalo. Yeah. Yesterday, what we did yesterday. Tzadik tesam and beis, third taste, samach l'min chalo yechel. Third taste, v'im taimar. The Gemara says, b'tzeka shalnachem, which we mentioned yesterday, b'tzeka is dough of a guy. So this is something that you made sure it didn't become chametz, but it wasn't made lishma. So you can't use it for shmur matzah. Can't be yotzi your mitzvah with it. That's called b'tzeka shalnachem. So the halach is memala adam kreise mehem. You can fill yourself up with them. Ubelvad sheichel kazayis matzah b'achrena, as long as you eat a kazayis matzah at the end. So if it says v'hacha atzur lechel afil mi ba'idayim. There the Gemara says you can eat as many b'tzeka shalnachem as you want, and just make sure you eat a kazayis matzah when you're done the night. And here you're telling me I got to stop eating, in the middle of the afternoon on Erev Pesach? How does that make sense? The Taisus answers, V'yesh lemer de ba'oisa hasuda adam nizhar, ve'ena oichel kol soivai kadei sheyechel matzah l'te'avai. When you're in the middle of a meal, you're more easily able to gauge how much you can eat and how much you can't eat until you're going to be full. But once you're in the afternoon, you think, if I'm eating now, by the time the meal comes, I'll be hungry. And it ends up, you'll eat too much and you won't be hungry. That's a svara of Taisus. So we can apply that svara to Rabbi Yossi as well. As long as you're in the middle of a seudah, as long as it's the same seudah, then we have a svara that you can keep track of how much to eat and how much not to eat. That's one way to say it. Another way to say this nusach a little differently is that once you're eating, and not Latesa, but other Rishonim says svara, which I think may resonate more with us. Once you start eating, you can continue eating, which is true, right? When you're middle of a meal, you can just keep eating because your body doesn't catch on that you're full until later. Right? Once you stop eating, then you get full, and then it's harder to eat later. When you're in the middle of it, your juices are flowing. You can eat more. So therefore, if you're emtza seudah, when you're in the middle of a meal, we're not concerned that you're not going to be able to eat the matzah l'te'avin. It's only when it's in a different meal, which would be a bigger issue for Rabbi Yehuda, like you pointed out. I don't know what he would do with that. Yeah. Okay. That's all for tonight, so folks.